Hey guys, welcome to Hey Guys, an internet obsessed podcast where we discuss all your favorite social media stars, what they're doing, and how we feel about it. I am your host, Amanda Haslicka, a content producer for Instant, which basically means I keep my finger on the pulse of the internet at all times. And if you don't know what Instant is, it's a new media outlet and video platform dedicated entirely to covering digital creators. And today I am joined by Hunter March. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm very impressed with that intro.
I mean,
very
I read it.
Well
I did
done.
memorize it.
It doesn't matter. You read it without issue. And
okay.
On nerves, that is impressive.
Oh yeah, I was telling him before we started, I'm nervous because he's a host. So to be a host, interviewing a host, it's uncharted territory for me personally.
Well, usually it's the worst of all interviews because both people have no substance in their own lives. So it's just like, we're just like, hey, so tell me about the things you're going. And then they're like, no, you tell me.
You go first.
Yeah, like when Fallon interviews Seacrest or something like that. They're both just like asking each other questions.
Right.
Sometimes it's super funny. It's funny for us, but
right. Hopefully I'll be more in depth than Fallon and just sit there and praise you and just be like, oh my God, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
That's a good impression of Fallon. Oh my God, wow, it's
which
he's
I
incredible.
love him, so who cares?
He's the sweetest man in the whole world.
Have you met him?
No, but I did interview Ryan Seacrest, which was weird. And I told him, hey, a lot of people say I'm like a younger version of you. I don't think he liked that very much. Yeah, I don't think he was very interested in hearing that.
But he's just so legendary. There's not, Ryan Seacrest. He's made his mark on this world, and I don't think he has anything to be scared about.
No, he is fine. I don't think he was threatened by me. I think he was just more put off. He's like, why is this kid talking to me?
Well, thank you again for joining us. So you have a book out. It's called, I don't want to butcher the name, TBH 51 True Story Collabs.
I mean, again, 2 for 2 on the reading.
I read words good. I like to think that I do. But so I liked the book. I thought it was so great. It's so fun. You're a really good writer.
Thank you.
Which is so interesting to me that you didn't go to college and you just kind of...
Well, technically, I did go to college for English because I loved writing and I loved any sort of creative outlet. I love speech writing. I love poetry. I loved all that growing up. But when I was going to college, there's so many other things you have to do besides the thing you love. It was really difficult for me to pass my classes in any sort of impressive way. And it was community college because you're supposed to get A's and B's and then transfer.
Right.
I wasn't really on that track. And I kept getting jobs in the industry. I kept getting jobs as a PA or as a grip or as a gaff. And I would take all of them. I would absorb them. And then finally, my college counselor was like, hey, by the way, if you drop out of any more classes... you can't really go to a UC.
Yeah.
And I was in there that day to tell them, by the way, I'm dropping out of 4 more classes. So at that point, I was like, all right, I'm going to start working. And I found Awesomeness, and I was an intern. And then finally, they were like, hey, we need you to drop out of your classes. And that was when I stopped going.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You kind of found Awesomeness. So walk us through, for those who maybe haven't read the book, or just walk us through what you can expect and what's in the book a little bit. It's your journey, sort of.
Sure. Well, if you haven't read the book yet, what are you doing?
Do it.
What are you doing with your life?
It's a very quick read. It's a very it's a pleasant read as well.
Quick read, long write. It was a long write.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. So the book is 51 true stories. 27 of them were written by myself about everything in my life. I had, it kind of starts off a little dark and sad with the birthday party, but I had a birthday party in middle school that no one showed up to. Invited a ton of people, even told people they weren't invited. That's how sure I was. I was like, hey, God. Just to let you know, 20-person limit. You just missed the cut, Adam.
Oh my God.
And then Adam didn't show up, and neither did the 20 people that I did invite.
So rude.
And then years later, I threw a birthday party, and everybody came to that, people that I didn't want at my party. And the whole point was just kind of understanding who your friends are and appreciating those friendships and not wanting to be, not wanting to need to be the coolest kid in the school when... for me, as soon as I realized I had friends that I was close with, and maybe we weren't the coolest kids in the school, but that's what mattered. Anyway, that's kind of the subset story of it. But
I will say one side note: it's more. My sister always says it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies, if you know what I mean.
That is a great wow.
Right?
You should write my book. You should have written it.
I didn't. My sister said that. I've just heard her say it. But
it's good though. And if you heard your sister say it, technically it's yours too. It's intellectual property, sibling.
Right. Totally.
And then the book goes into a bunch of other stuff. I, talk about the fact that I don't drink alcohol and that I've never drank alcohol. And
which I find so interesting. That's, you had one sip of a screwdriver, but...
No, I didn't. I didn't even have the sip of the screwdriver. I pretended.
I pretended. Well, no wonder. Screwdrivers are disgusting.
Yeah,
so.
But I remember very vividly all those kids drinking, and I just didn't have any interest young.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, people think it's for all different reasons. Everyone assumes it's religious, or everyone assumes it's because my dad like was super aggressive with like a punishment. But no, I really just, I was very scared of getting addicted to alcohol because I knew my personality. Like I bite my nails. You're probably going to look at my nails at some point now. They're not that bad, but I know that I can't stop. And like I've tried everything to stop biting my nails. And I just can't imagine if I did that with something that was actually detrimental to my life or to those around me, especially. Biting my nails is annoying and it's gross.
But you can like live with it.
Yeah, but I'm not going to kill, a family driving in a car because I was biting and driving.
It's not going to like affect your career and your relationships. And
exactly. And I value all that stuff a lot more. So those are 27 of the stories. And then the other 24 of the 51 are written by other people because I have all these incredible friends who are all celebrities in the internet world. Like Jen X Penn, Jen McAllister, Lauren Elizabeth, Alex Iono, the Merrill twins, Cimarelli. They all have incredible stories, but not all of them have an outlet to do a book or to put them all out.
Or a whole book.
Or do a whole book, exactly. I didn't even have a whole book. That's why I did it this way.
Hey, guys. Yeah, can you help me out?
And so they all wrote one story that, stories that I could never tell. Like my friend Ryan A. wrote about losing his mother to cancer. That's an experience that so many people go through, and I never did. And for me to even feign telling that story or try to would be it wouldn't be okay. Yeah. So I had him write that story, and he was so gracious in doing so. And Alex wrote about breaking up with the girl and dealing with that. And Lauren wrote about loving herself. And we have all these incredible stories, things that I can never say. And it just come together in this beautiful book. And the fact that Scholastic let me do it, Scholastic being my dream publisher, it makes it a real book, in my opinion. And so
I love the idea that it's like the YouTube community and the digital community is so collaborative, and that's like literally what this book is. It's like a humongous collaboration. So.
It was, and I think the coolest part was delivering the books to my friends who wrote stories. I think they got a big kick out of seeing themselves in the book, but I think they got a bigger kick out of seeing everyone else's stories. Because there's some stories that like, my friend Andrew wrote one. Andrew Lau in the book wrote a story, and I don't think all of his friends knew this story, and it's pretty personal and in-depth, and it's about him growing up with an eating disorder. And I think when they read that, they were all a little taken aback. And to think that that could happen to someone close to you, I can only imagine what would happen if you just loved this person, but you didn't know them personally, but you maybe were going through the same thing or had similar experiences. I got to imagine that someone out there was really, really receptive to each of these stories.
Because that's a hard thing to open up about, and to put pen to paper and to actually do that seems really difficult. It's one thing to say it out loud, but to like write it down and people can read it over and over again, and it's just, that's very brave.
I don't know if I would have written a story that personal myself, because he's a very, very, very inspirational, brave person. And Ricky Thompson, same thing. He wrote about coming out to his family in a very conservative house. That's a story that a lot of people struggle to tell their friends or their family, let alone the world in a book with the intention of helping them.
And strangers and people you don't know.
Yeah. So looking back at it, it's the coolest thing in the world to say that this book is done and it's out there and it's helping people. But it just came out, so we'll see. I mean, it might only help 4 people. We'll see.
Hey, you know what? I always I feel like even with this podcast, I'm like, you know what? Even if like one person listens to it and takes something away from it, you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, 4 quarters over 100 pennies.
Exactly.
No, we did a book tour recently, and doing all the book stops was really fun, meeting all the girls. But one thing we did was we stopped by a shelter or a group home because the book is partnered with the Pajama Program, and through them we're donating a copy of a Scholastic book from their catalog for every book of our book sold. And so we're donating those books to the Pajama Program, which helps young boys and girls, all ages, kind of have a better night's sleep. So they give them pajamas, they give them books, they basically have volunteers tuck them in at night and read them a story and give them the good night that a lot of kids need to have a good morning. So we actually visited one of the group homes, and I got to talk to the girls, and man, that was the most powerful thing. I mean, it's just so important, I think, for people to realize your life is very, very that's a selfish thing to only care about. And so for me to be able to meet those girls and just talk to them, it's selfish for me to even do that because I got so much out of it. Like I felt so good about like seeing these girls happy even though they've dealt with all this stuff. It was so incredible. So
well, that's why I feel like books are still so important. It's like people think, oh, YouTube, we're the digital age, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, there's just still something to be said about the storytelling of books and how much that can still make an impact and how that can still, you know, resonate with people.
Yeah, I think there's something really different about having that tangible, like this is my book, as opposed to saying this is a YouTube video that everyone is watching at the same time. It's like, no, this is my book. These stories connect to me.
Totally.
I love this. Totally. And it's a different world. I'm noticing that like I am not popular at the author world. Like no one at these book fairs knows who I am. But hopefully,
we're like, hey, I have a book.
Yeah,
like,
technically me. But no one really, it's just interesting to see the differences.
How did the idea of the book kind of, like, where did it come from? How did it get sparked in your brain?
There's a few different reasons it kind of ended up being what it is. The first one was I love true stories. I just think they're so much more powerful than fiction for me, at least.
Right. That's why I love reality TV.
Well, that's
honestly.
different. That is totally different and not the same.
Hey, you know what? I mean, they're based in reality. Let's say that.
They're based in reality, sure. You should know that reality TV is not real.
I know, but you know, it's real people.
It's like the difference between
life.
watching a documentary about something and watching kind of just a make-believe movie about something. When they do that, or when they do based on a true story, stuff like that, that always has so much more impact on me because some of those stories no one would ever believe if they weren't true stories, if they were just made up movies. So for me, I love true stories, and I also love short stories because growing up, I had a really hard time finishing books, finishing chapters. My attention, I had huge attention issues growing up.
And I feel like it's only gotten worse with
completely.
you know?
You're just training people to think that there's something every 2 minutes you should be on to the next, which is okay. That's just the way the world is going. But for me, I wanted to give kids and young people a book where even if they only read for 5 minutes and then they lost their attention, they finished a story and they felt good and they knew that they could come back and pick up whenever they wanted.
Yeah.
Like and also, I didn't have 51 stories, so that's why it's kind of the way it is.
Why 51? Why not just 50, 49?
Well, it's actually a really good reason. It's because the 52nd person dropped out. Oh, okay. So that's why we ended up at 51.
I didn't know if it was like, oh, 51's like my lucky number.
It is now.
Right?
Yeah.
So how did you, I'm sure that there were some people that you either pitched to or that wrote stories that maybe didn't make the cut. Are there any ones that you can tell us about? Because I'm sure like there might be a follow-up because, you know, I'm sure you have that one story. You have one story that you could add to a follow-up.
I've got a few stories that I could add to a follow-up, but I think if I did it again, I'd want to write less and I'd want to invite more people because to me that was the best part, was seeing all these different worlds come together. Yeah. Because every story is relatable in some way or another. Every true story has a human touch no matter who you are. So if I did it again, it would be a lot less of me. But yeah, no one really dropped out or did anything that there was one person who had a story that they wrote and then they looked back and they were like, that's actually might be too personal. Like I'm kind of dealing with it still. Wow. And I was like, yeah, of course, please don't do anything that you don't feel comfortable with. But other than that,
or I didn't know if like editors were like, we don't, you know, maybe let's take this one out or let's take that.
They did that with my stories, not with other people's stories. Just because so many, you know, you look at your life and sometimes you think it's interesting and sometimes you think it isn't. Yeah. But sometimes you think something's remarkably interesting. And they're like, no one.
So hard to gauge. So hard to gauge.
Yeah, it's like when you start telling a story to a group of people and then you could tell that everyone's bored and you try and change the story. Scholastic changed a couple of my stories.
Well, and then you're like, I feel like there's that weird balance of you're like, oh, this is like such a great story, and then you tell it and no one thinks it's great, and then you're like, well, I guess I'll like, okay, here you go, and then they're like, that's great.
Yeah.
So it's like you can never tell.
Never.
You can never tell what people are gonna like pick up on.
I had a lot of different people read the stories before they got published, so that made me feel better.
Yeah.
I was like, not all 8 of you are gonna let me put a bad story in.
Yeah. So I feel like you mentioned that you have some embarrassing videos that you made in your like kind of pre-awesomeness days.
Yeah.
I mean, just maybe give us a couple that are. You don't have to like. Obviously, we're not going to watch them, but what are some ones that you're like? Oh
I would
God,
hope that no one ever can watch them ever again because they're all private now. At least most of them. When I first started, the first video I did was a history class assignment when I was in high school. and it was just like do something about like a different event in history, and like there was you could select between a bunch. I did it about the Olympics, and I did it about this guy who was weird British. I don't even know what voice I was doing. His name was Rooney, and he was British, and he was a soccer player, and he was training for the 16s something. I don't even know. Olympics. But it was supposed to be like in this. It was a long time ago, yet there was color television making a full story about it, like a news network in the video. And I was wearing super short shorts, and I was stretching in front of the camera, and I was like, that's a lot of jokes. Years later, I found out that the teacher, almost to this day, still shows that video as like a good example. And then kids are like, is that Hunter March? And then he goes, yeah, take photos and post it on Twitter.
Oh my God. So do you get like every once in a while?
Every
like a
once in a blue moon, I'll get a picture.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
That's so funny.
So that one's gone. And then there's some other ones that I was a little more vulgar in my early days. And now I kind of tone it back.
Keep it clean.
Yeah, I want to keep it clean. So those ones are gone too.
So I really like you really kind of worked your way up. Like you really weren't afraid to kind of like start from the bottom. Like you got people coffee and you did all that kind of stuff, and which I think is so interesting because I feel like a lot of people nowadays, like we were having a debate the other day, just like in our office about kind of like Gen Z versus, you know, millennials, and how Gen Z kids aren't really looking to go to college because, you know, a lot of times college you just end up like with a crushing amount of debt, whereas you could kind of go and experience things, and you could go just kind of like learn by example kind of thing. So what do you think? Where do you I mean, you obviously kind of went the other route of just kind of learning through experience and working your way up through that. But what do you think about, like, where do you kind of land on that?
I just had an interesting thought based on what you were saying about like why kids aren't going to college as much. I think as much as they don't think it's necessary, employers are thinking it's less and less necessary. Like no one ever has asked me in my field where I went to college, because I would say to a community college for a little bit. That would be my answer. But I also think the reason for that is because employers are younger and younger and younger, and people, you know, are starting companies, you know, really early on, and kind of the older generation is being phased out a little bit. And
like they get it more than
I think they went to college and they value college, and this generation didn't go to college, and because they didn't go to college, now they don't ask for that when you apply for a job there. They don't care. Also, like, even I'm an employer. I have people who work for me. It's not a lot of people. It's like 1 or 2 people, but I don't care where they went to college. In fact, I prefer people who didn't go to college because they don't think they know more than me about the thing I've been doing for years. I'm sure they do know more than me about a ton of things, about trigonometry and physics and stuff like that, but I don't care about that for the thing that I'm having you do. I want you to know how to make really cool content with me and how to be engaging on social media. And I could teach you that faster than any teacher could because it's what I know and it's specific to my job. I think more employers feel that way. Let's just train people.
Yeah, and I was a journalism major, and everything is just changing so quickly that I'm like, there are courses at my college that I'm sure did not exist when I was there that are brand new because it's like just such an ever-changing field that to go and study it, you know, who knows, by the time you graduate it might be like a, you know, like a useless thing that you learned, or there's something brand new. Or I will say for me, I kind of fall on I loved my college experience and I had a really great time. So, but I get the idea of the crushing amount of debt. Like that just seems like not fun for anybody. But I really but I do think, to me, college is sort of like life with training wheels, where you can go and learn how to make your own schedule and, you know, meet deadlines on your own, and there's no one holding your hand or telling you to go to class, or, you know, you have to kind of like self-motivate yourself to do all this kind of stuff. So I think in those aspects, college can be helpful. If you're not ready, like I don't think I would have necessarily been ready to dive into like the workforce at 18. So I think for me, college worked, but I think it definitely is more and more whatever works for you.
It's a personal thing. Yeah. For me, it didn't make any sense, but I understand, like, my brother went to college and he loved college. But I also understand that he liked college because he didn't really know what he wanted to do. It's a good thing to do if you don't know what you want to do. But also, because of the way college is, you have to decide what you want to do at the beginning. Right. That's kind of unfortunate. Like,
but you can do, you know, you can have a degree in one thing and do something else. You know, it's not like you have a gun to your head and you have to like do whatever it is that's, you know, on your degree for the rest of your life. But
if I went to college, it would be for networking, just to meet people. That's it.
Right. Well, that's how, I mean, I was in a sorority in college, and as corny as this sounds, like when you go through like recruitment things, they honestly like teach you like how to talk to people and how to like have a conversation, which isn't necessarily something that like you have a section in your book where like these are things that should be taught, where it's like, you know, plumbing or whatever, like random things. And that's, and I feel like that's kind of true, where it's like, you know, like just even like conversation etiquette, where if you, let's say you are networking at some kind of event or something and someone, you know, random joins a conversation, like how to let them in the conversation. Like, oh, like Hunter and I were just talking about, you know, XYZ, like to get them, you know, just like little things like that.
That's interesting.
Where you don't, like that's not necessarily something I would have never taken a class in college that taught me how to do that. But yeah, so I think
college is just a mishmash of people and learning and experiencing, but you can also do that anywhere in the world. So it's kind of like, I also think that not a lot of people have the opportunity to not go to college.
Yeah.
Like a lot of young people, you know, they might get a scholarship to go to college and they don't necessarily have a job lined up doing what they do. For me, I was really lucky that my parents supported me going to community college until I got a job. And then even when I got a job, I wasn't getting paid a lot at all. I was getting paid like nothing as an intern and then very little as a PA. I wouldn't have been able to do that had I had to worry about my own apartment and, you know, paying for my own food and my own gas, my own car, and my own like cell phone. I was only paying for a few of those things, and it made it really easy to, you know, I didn't have to worry about an apartment. I was living at home. So it made it easy to go be an intern somewhere and take that risk.
So you've done your fair share of like red carpets, and I've done my fair share of red carpets. So I want to know some of your most like memorable kind of like interviews or encounters. Just
I'll tell you one good one and one bad one.
Love it.
What do you want
Or we could do, this is another thing I learned in my sorority in college. You do pro, con, pro, where you want to start on a high note and end on a high note. So maybe we'll do one good one, two bad ones, and then one good one.
Do you have a good one and a bad one?
I have all kinds of.
Then we'll do.
We'll do. Okay.
Start with your pro, then my con, then your con, then my pro. Okay. So what was your good one?
Ooh, my good one. I have so many. Okay, this is probably my favorite one actually. So if you haven't done red carpet interviews, or for anyone who's listening who has like no idea, I'll set a scenario a little bit. Usually with red carpets, if you're towards the end, there's a good chance that like the bigger people who are there are just gonna walk right past you, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I have to go in. So sorry."
You
it's like,
have
well,
to
maybe
yell at them like they're animals, in
which
a zoo.
I'm so bad at that. Like I just am like, no, I can't do it. I'm not very good at that. But anyways, so I was at this pretty small red carpet, and it was for Paley Fest, which is like a TV fest that, you know, where people do, it's like shows and they do panels and Q&As and all that kind of stuff. So it was for Parks and Rec, which I was a huge, am a huge fan of. And I remember I talked to like Chris Pratt. And so this was like 5 years ago though. So like, I'm pretty sure he was still chubby, but I talked to like Chris Pratt, talked to Retta, I talked to a bunch of the different people there. And Amy Poehler was like the last one. And I was like, there were maybe two other people behind me. Like I was like one of the very last people. And like Amy Poehler just kind of looks down, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get her. And then she kind of looks over and she's like, oh, okay, just like a couple more questions. I still have to talk to these people. And she went and she talked to every single one of us. I think I asked her like 2 questions, but she still went.
So big.
And I was like, and I'm the biggest Amy Poehler fangirl ever. So that was like the most exciting thing ever to me. I asked her something about Aziz, because he had hung out with like Barack Obama like somewhat recently. So I think I asked her about that. And then because Parks and Rec is like pretty big on like Tumblr. So I asked her about that, and I said something about a GIF, and she goes, "That's how you pronounce that." And she like did it, because it was still when GIFs were like pretty new.
Yeah, GIF.
And I'll never forget that. That's like my pro.
That's a good pro.
Yeah.
And now it's time for me to bring the whole mood down.
Yes, bring it down.
I was on the red carpet for Ender's Game, and it was when I first started, and it was for this like gaming channel. And they had questions for me to ask, so I didn't really even get to improv, which is now kind of what I do on all these carpets.
Yeah.
And it was Harrison Ford was coming down the carpet, and he's notoriously difficult to interview.
Yeah.
He's a very cranky old man, but he's like embraces it and he loves it. He comes down the carpet, and I give him this. It was not a great question to have to ask. But the question for Harrison Ford was, what do you think was faster, the ship you fly in Ender's Game or the Millennium Falcon? And I did not know at this time that he hates talking about Star Wars for things that aren't Star Wars. In fact, I think he doesn't really like talking about it very often anyway, because it's kind of like his life.
Well, especially I feel like at that time, like Star Wars, like they hadn't announced that it was like gonna have this like rebirth.
Right.
So it was like dead.
It was a weird time.
Yeah.
And so he kind of looks at me and then he goes, oh, and he kind of walks away from me and he doesn't say anything. And then right after that, Ben Kingsley comes up to me, who's an incredible actor. He's amazing. One of the best actors of all time. And my question for him was, he plays like a guy who ends up being a hero in the thing, but he kind of is like bad in this. And then in Iron Man, he plays a bad guy who's actually not that bad of a guy. Like I asked him, what's more fun, playing a bad guy or a good guy? And then he looks at me, he goes, really, is that your best question? And I was like, no, it's not. He goes, it's just that, like, that's the question that you would ask if this was your first interview ever. And I was like, you're right. I'm so sorry. Can I ask you a different one? He goes, yeah. And I was like, I don't have a different one. So it was very awkward, but he was very sweet, and he taught me a valuable lesson in preparation and owning your own questions. And that's my con. So now let's keep this poop train going.
Okay, so my first carpet ever was like it was like some Us Weekly event. And I think I asked like Kelly Osbourne. This was like, I was an intern still at the time. And like they kind of, again, like they just give you questions and you're like, okay, cool. And at the time, you don't really think like, oh, this is a question I should ask this person because it has something to do with their life or whatever. So I think at the time, like Eva Longoria was like getting divorced. And so I was like, I asked Kelly Osbourne about it. And like in retrospect, you're like, why would I ever, they have nothing to do with each other. But it was just like one of those things where I was like, I guess I'm just going to ask you this because it's like on this piece of paper that I'm supposed to. God, I think she was just like, divorces are sad, like blah, blah, blah.
Oh my God, worst answer ever. Probably like literally said, I don't want to ever talk to that person again. Yeah. That's what I think Harrison Ford said to me. I did interview her again a few years later. Was it better?
Yes, it was. But then she yelled at someone who because her mom supposedly has some kind of feud with like Christina Aguilera. And so the girl next to me asked about that. And then like when they were done rolling, Kelly was just like, she started like yelling at her and was like, don't do that, da, 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 da.
Wow.
So, yeah.
All right, let's end this one on a pro.
Yes.
I was offered the opportunity to interview Jim Parsons and then my favorite human being ever, Rihanna. And I was beyond excited. It was for this movie Up for DreamWorks, and that's my company works with DreamWorks, so that was how we got the interview in the first place. And I told my girlfriend, I was like, hey, we're going to go to New York. I'm going to fly you out if you want to go to meet Rihanna and Jim Parsons and do the interview. My girlfriend also really likes Rihanna. So she was like, sure. I was like, but I'm telling you this now. If Rihanna says, hey, you guys are both really beautiful. Do you want to come back and stay the night with me? We have to say yes. And my girlfriend was pretty sure that wasn't going to happen. So she goes, okay, sure.
You never know with Rihanna.
You never know with Rihanna. She's so free spirit. She's a bad guy. I like it. And so we get to the interview. We're waiting. My girlfriend's nervous, and she's not even the one doing the interview. Then Jim Parsons walks in with nobody. He just sits down. He's so sweet and nice and says hi. And then Rihanna walks in with like 5 people, and they're all like all over her. And she's a goddess walking, and she's so beautiful. And I'm nervous, but I go up to her and I'm like, hi, Rihanna, my name's Hunter Marsh. I'm going to be interviewing you right now. And she goes, oh, it's so lovely to meet you. And she gives me her hand, and her hands are so soft and so sweet. And then she like sees my girlfriend kind of behind me sitting down because she wasn't going to introduce herself. And she takes her hand, she kind of moves it around me and kind of pushes me to the side and says, hi, who are you? And then my girlfriend goes,
I'm nobody. That's what I would say.
Oh my God, I'm his girlfriend. My name is Lex. And then she goes, you were the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And then my girlfriend goes like shocked. And then she goes, did everyone just hear that? And everyone laughs. And then I look at my girlfriend. I'm like, don't mess this up.
Oh my God.
This is our chance. And then I do the interview, and Jim walks out, and then it's me and Rihanna and Lex, and Rihanna goes, do you guys want to come back to my house tonight? I'm just kidding about that part. No, I'm kidding about that part.
You predicted it. But I thought like she would have been kidding. But
no, she did not say that. She left with her entourage of really great people. They were all really sweet. And we did not go home with her. But me and my girlfriend have an incredible story out of it.
That is a great story. I love that so much.
It was really good.
Okay, well, so you also have a new. Oh wait, I also wanted to mention this. I love your Oprah reference at the end, where you're like, "You get a buck," because Oprah is like, I'm sure. Are you an Oprah fan?
I'm an Oprah fan. I'm a fan of everything she's been able to do. It's revolutionized everything that she touches, and she's just a sweet woman.
Have you met her?
No.
Okay.
If I'd met her, I would not be here. I'd be worshiping the shrine that I created.
Right. There's actually a really interesting podcast, like speaking of podcasts we're on right now, there's one called Making Oprah that's just kind of about the history of her talk show. It's only like 4 episodes or something like that. But
it's really good.
So interesting. Like I was a huge Oprah watcher, so if you like Oprah, go listen to it.
Wow.
What would you say is your favorite part about being in the digital community?
I really love the community as a whole. I love the people that are in it. I think it's really difficult to kind of get where a lot of us are today, the point where we know everybody and we're going to the events and everything.
Especially now. It's like, it's pretty saturated, and if you want to break through, it's
really tough. But I think, the important thing there is, I'm at right now, I hang out with the biggest YouTubers that, I'm so lucky to be friends with them. But even when I was first starting out and I got to be friends with YouTubers that weren't so big, like to me, those were the biggest YouTubers. And before that, I got, I had one friend who had a few thousand subscribers. I was like, I'm friends with a real YouTuber. So I think it's cool that no matter where you are, you're surrounded by people that are at the same position as you, as opposed to being a celebrity or not a celebrity on TV. You have a TV show or you don't. You have a movie or you don't. On YouTube, everybody has something, and you get to be around people that you love. And then I also think the cool thing is anybody can do it, like, there are people who will work for years and their videos won't take off. And then there are other people who are just meant to do this, and they put out one video and it catches fire, and the next video catches fire, and all of a sudden in a year they're the biggest YouTuber on the platform.
Well, that's kind of like your Rebecca Black story. She wrote a story for you, and I didn't really know the backstory of Friday, and she was like, no one was ever supposed to see that. And so I feel like that's kind of sort of like, I feel like she was able to recover from that in a really good way, where it was something, she went viral, but maybe not for reasons she wanted to. But then she was able to kind of take that, and she's been able to make something really great of it. So
it happens. You don't know why it's going to happen or when, but it might happen. And when it does, it's kind of it might change your life. I mean, I know for her it did. But that's also an extremely rare case.
Right. I feel like it's one of those things, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but like, it's always when you're kind of not really thinking about it that much that things tend to like do well, or when it's something that you're like, I feel like you can sort of plan for success but there's only so much you can do, that at a certain point you kind of just maybe need to like follow your intuition or whatever. And I feel like a lot of times things like that are popular for us, like we would have never predicted that. Like I had no idea that would have done so well. And then there are other things where you put a lot of time and a lot of effort and nothing. So
I think the thing that I've learned in this industry, and the reason that when people ask me, should I be a host, should I be a YouTuber, is that it's so difficult to break into it in any meaningful way, like to the point where you can survive off of it and live the life you want to live. I think the people who do the best are the people who just have a passion for something. I think it used to be a passion for acting or directing. Now it's like a passion for cooking, and they start their own YouTube channel. If you stay consistent, it'll happen. I think the formula that makes the most sense is success is preparation meets luck, or timing or whatever it is. But that's how it was for me. I put all the prep in. I did all the jobs I could. I learned how to shoot and produce videos long before I had a job producing. And when the opportunity arose, I was there. Or wait, luck is preparation meets opportunity.
Something like that.
Whatever. You guys Google it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the thing for me, is like, I look back at my career and I know there are a few milestones where if anything had been different, had I messed up that opportunity or not taken this job, even though it might not have seemed like the best thing to do at the moment, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
And I could have easily 2 years in been like, oh, this isn't for me. It's really not working out. I'm not making enough to live. I'm going to go be a teacher. And I would have been a teacher for the rest of my life. It's so hit or miss. And there are people who stick with it for 20 years and they never make it. And there's people who get famous tomorrow.
Like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
Something really good.
Wait, what were we talking about? I swear this is like where my ADD kicks in, where you're just like, so you were talking about hosting and shit.
I was talking about hosting, then maybe I talked about, it's kind of like, we were talking about, yeah. Well, no, let's leave this part in. This is the part, this is what people want to see.
That's true. It was going to be really good. Maybe it'll come to me, but.
Maybe this will cue you. The one thing I do want to say about people who want to get into YouTube is do it while still doing the thing that is your backup.
Yeah.
Have a job. Go to school, whatever it is, you can do both. And if you can't do both, you shouldn't be doing YouTube. Because doing YouTube to be successful, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of self, kind of regulation. Like you're your own boss. So if you're not able to leave work at 9 p.m. and then go to your room and write for an hour and then in the morning shoot for 2 hours, that's 3 hours in your week. That's not a lot of time. And that's easily enough time to shoot and write a video. Another few hours to edit it and boom, you have a video. If you can't do both, don't quit your job.
Yeah. I thought of what I was going to say. Oh, so kind of going off of, like it sounds so corny, but like everything happens for a reason and your path is like, I feel like you shouldn't question anything that kind of when things happen to you, good or bad, because I remember when I graduated college, I was like, I wanted to work at E so bad. That was like my dream of dreams. And I got an internship there. And so after college, I was just like, okay, I'm here. Like I'm at E and that's it. Like this is it. And I didn't end up, the internship was great and I loved it so much, but I didn't end up getting a job there just because I think
because they made a mistake.
They did. They made a huge like Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman mistake. No. It just didn't end up working out, but then I ended up getting another internship, led to do a job. Like, so it's just one of those things where I think if you set out where you're like, I want to do this and that's it. And if you have like your blinders on, like that's not necessarily
it's not
a good thing. You should just kind of be open to whatever the universe has for you.
Yeah. I think a lot of people get stuck in that in the beginning is like they want to be an actor. So someone says, hey, do you want to come and be a camera operator on my shoot? And they're like, no, not what I like. But then that director's like, hey, that director knows you now. And they want to maybe you tell them you're an actor. Right. I got so many jobs because I was just hungry to work. And now I'm to the point where like, I'm so blessed that I can pick and choose kind of what I want to do in some ways. Obviously, there's some opportunities that are impossible to pass up that I like, the game show that I just got is like the coolest thing in the world. But if I don't want to do something, I now have the opportunity to say no. And usually I still don't. I still just go do it because I like doing stuff.
And like what's going to be beneficial about, it's like a work smarter, not harder kind of thing where you're like, okay, like I know that this is going to, I'll learn this from this or this will help me go. But you just need to be a little bit more strategic about it. Right. Like, what am I going to get out of this? Like, is it worth my time? Because we only have so much time and so many hours in the day. Completely. So, amazing segue there. Emogenius, right? Is that how you say it?
That's not how you say it. So that's really embarrassing for everybody.
How do you say it?
No, you keep going. You're going to get there.
I wrote it down and I watched the preview.
Okay. In the preview, did I mess it up when I said it?
I cannot remember how it was repeated, and that's why I'm saying
try it again. You're going to get it. There's only a few ways to say it.
Did I Emogen? Emogenius?
Say it louder.
Emogenius.
No.
How do you say it?
How do you say the actual word?
Emoji.
Emoji?
Emoji.
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 Emogenius.
Emogenius.
Yeah. We got there.
That makes it sound like it's about like emos.
It's about super smart, sad people.
Really smart, sad people.
Who are inventing time traveling machines to fix their childhoods.
I like my pronunciation better, personally.
You know what? We played with that in the beginning, and then eventually we just gave up and called it Emogenius.
Emogenius. But that's so exciting. It's like a real live game show on like a real live television network that you can watch on real life TVs. Yeah, it's pretty insane. Yeah. I'm so incredibly thankful for it because it was the coolest job in the world. I got to work with people who are just the best at game shows. It's Game Show Network, and it's what I love. And my grandfather was a game show host, and so to kind of follow in that lineage is really incredible. Yeah, being on it was just kind of a whirlwind. I was super nervous the first day, and then we ended up shooting 40 episodes in 2 weeks. That was like TV production for you.
Yeah. It was 5 episodes a day, basically, 4 days a week. And then 3 days to purely just recover. Because at the end of the week, everybody was shot. Especially me. I was like,
you have to be on. And like,
yeah, I was on and my voice was gone every single Thursday. And it was really tough. But all I want to do is come back for season 2 if we get one. So that'll be
Emogenius. I know how to say it now. So we have just a quick little game since you are a game show host.
I
it's
love
in your blood.
this.
It's nothing like it's just a never have I ever. Just a little never have I ever.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Okay, so this is kind of like the host edition. Never have I ever, the host edition. It's like
never have I
you're
ever.
hosting and game shows coming together.
So am I holding up 5 fingers or something, or are we just doing it
No,
like
we're just gonna do like
have or haven't?
Yeah, have or haven't. So never have I ever been denied a selfie with someone I interviewed.
I've never asked because I just don't really. Yeah, I understand
I won't
how
ask
weird
you
it
for
is.
one,
No, you can totally. I think it's different when it's like promotional. But for me, like me taking a photo with a celebrity was never like for the channel. It was just more like, oh, I really want a photo with Rihanna. I didn't want to do that. I like to give people their space, not because I think that that's what they want, but I know that they deal with it all the time. So for one person to just say no, it's kind of a nice little breather.
Totally. I get gun shy about that too. You're like, I just don't want to bother you. I feel like also seeing famous people that you know in public and like not saying anything to them, that's like, I'm like, this is my gift to you. Like, I know that you don't want to be bothered.
Totally. But I also think the other side of it is most celebrities want to be asked for a selfie. Most celebrities want to be bothered. That's why they're celebrities. Right.Maybe at a certain point, once you're Kanye or Kim, maybe then you're like, okay, I can actually use a break. But most celebrities are stoked when you enjoy their work. I'll like yell out sometimes. Like there's a couple people like Taran Killam from like Saturday Night Live. Love him. I saw him like he was going to like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles premiere, and I was like we had like parked in the same parking structure, and I was just like I wasn't even going to it. Like I was just like going to run errands or something. And I was just like, oh, I'm a really big fan of yours, and you're just like, oh, thanks. That's so great. See, he loves it.
Yeah. So just but that's funny.
I think the only time not to ask for a selfie is when someone's eating. Or like you can vibe the situation. If someone's having an argument, don't ask them for a selfie.
Never have I ever had a publicist cut an interview short because things were getting awkward.
Oh my God, all the time that happened. Are you kidding?
Or you like ask a weird question, you're like, okay, thank you, we're done here.
Yeah, totally. That happens all the time, especially with like people I'm friends with, like the Morano sisters from Disney Channel. We have such weird interviews where the publicist every time is like, okay. And then they're like, no, we're just a minute more. They like it. So it's
at least it's like not, that's funny because it can be real awkward where
like we wanted to do something with Rihanna when we were going to interview her. I pitched the idea of let's FaceTime a kid who bullied me in middle school and high school and FaceTime her with Rihanna, and Rihanna says that she's my new girlfriend. And it would have been such a great clip. It would have been viral, would have fit in with the movie. It would have been super good. And it got stopped probably at publicist 1 of 4. And it's just publicists are being overprotective, and that happens during the interview as well.
I feel like most of the time, it's the publicist is the one who's like I feel like the celebrity would be fine with it. Like they don't care, but it's the publicist like shutting it down because they're not sure if they would want to do it. So
I'm pretty sure Rihanna would have loved the opportunity to be my girlfriend on a FaceTime.
Never have I ever acted like you hadn't met the celebrity before, even if you had, or vice versa.
Do that all the time even with people. I'll pretend I didn't meet them because it's more comfortable for them to say like, oh, no, we did meet, as opposed to being like, oh, I don't remember meeting you. Yeah. I'm just trying to be nice to them.
That's how I know. I feel like there's been times in interviews where I've like Miles Teller. Like I interviewed, there was like 4 years ago, I think I interviewed Miles Teller like 4 different times. And every time I would just be like, hi, nice to meet you. And then finally he was like, we've met before. And I was like, okay. Like, cause I just like would never assume or imagine in a million years that anyone would remember meeting me. So it's more
I will always remember meeting you.
So it's more of like I'm just like cutting myself down. I'm like, I'm trying to think if there's other people who I've interviewed multiple. I'm just like, I just don't even worry about it.
There's dozens.
Nice to meet you.
It always happens.
Yeah. Never have I ever forgotten an interviewee's name.
That has happened for sure. Especially doing like group interviews where there's like 4 boys in a band.
Oh, right.
And then you're like,
Tommy? Timmy?
And then you start going like, and what did you think when he did that?
Yeah. Or the best is like when you're just like, one time, this was I think like one of my first interviews here actually, and it was at VidCon, and it was with Casey Neistat, who like at the time I had heard of him, and I think I just got like really nervous, and I was like, now I know you just be like, so introduce yourself. And I was like, so say your name, say I'm Kate. And I like did not say Neistat. I like blanked on how to pronounce it. And he was like okay about it. Like he could have been a little bit nicer. He was like kind of mean, but it was fine. But yeah, it gets awkward. Well, but it's like, I saw you, I known you for like 2 seconds. Like I met you. It's like high stakes. Like
yeah, totally. It doesn't matter. And I think, Sarah, you're totally fine on that. Don't worry.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm trying to think of a fake name.
Literally, you could have picked any name in the world.
I was trying to pick
for this
something
bit.
with an H. Like
Heath.
Heath. Thanks, Heath.
Harry.
Heath, Harry. Those are both great names. Henry. Never have I ever winged an interview.
That's all I do nowadays. I don't write questions anymore. Now I just have conversations.
Yeah.
So much
more
better.
fun that way.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
More fun that way.
Stop looking at your thing. What question do you want to ask me? Anything
Well,
in the
no,
world.
this is have you ever gotten busted for winging an interview? Where like you weren't prepared and you kind of like maybe pretended like you had like watched a show and you hadn't, and the person was like, no.
No, just because I always have backup questions. Like I have 3 backup questions. Say I was going to interview Harrison Ford. My questions would be, what was it like driving the Millennium Falcon? Tell me about Star Wars and something else.
No.
He didn't let me get to those 3, but you always have your 3 like evergreen questions that you know that they'll answer. Like, what was the funniest moment on set?
No.
And then you could just riff again and you can have fun.
It's hard to find questions that are like different, that like, because I mean, at that point, these people are promoting something, so they've been asked like every question under the sun. But at the same time, they just want to stick to that, and they're like, don't ask me stuff that has nothing to do with the project. That's why I'm here, you know. But so it's a delicate balance.
I don't care about that. I don't care about their project. I want to have a real conversation with them.
Right. Well, I think on that note, is there anything else you want to discuss or get off your chest or?
This shirt is super itchy. No, you said you wanted to wing it. Ask me one question. It could be anything in the world, and then we'll end it that way. And I will answer truthfully. You can ask me one question.
Oh my God, there's so much pressure.
Yeah. And you can't cut out this thinking process, so make it fast.
I won't. I'll leave it in. I feel like that we should like play this. Speaking of game shows, I feel like we should like the Jeopardy theme over this. What is... Well, you mentioned like your favorite thing about being a part of the digital community. Is there anything about it that is maybe a downside or, you know,
that is
a
fantastic question, and you didn't write it down, and that's what I'm talking about. You're about to get some real answers for the 3 people who managed to stick through us rambling. The one thing I don't like about it, I think, is the effect it has on a lot of young people. I think there's a ton of things that are just really positive about this space and what we're doing. But I think there's so many bad influences online. I think it's really hard to discern who's a good influence and who's a bad influence and what your kids are watching.
Right.
I also think we put out so much not great content every day just to put out content that you get used to that. And then you watch a show like Breaking Bad and you're like, oh yeah, that's what amazing content's like. It's difficult for me to do that because I'm shooting it in my bedroom every single week, trying to release a 4-minute video. It kind of turned me off to making videos for a long time. And now I'm like, you know, it's like that old... thing they teach you in school where you have a bucket and then they fill it up with golf balls and they say, is it full? And then they're like, yeah. And then like, no, you pour some sand in there. And like, is it full now? And then they're like, no. And you pour some water. Movies are the golf balls. Sand is the TV shows. And water is everything in between. Those clips you watch when you're in the elevator, when you're going in your car. That being said, though, I think, we're getting better about figuring out what's good content and what's not good content.
No.
But... where everybody's kind of learning what they want their kids to watch. But I wish there were, more discernible things to make young people watch people who are good. That's kind of the other reason I wrote the book, is I wanted to make a collection of people that I approve of, and I know that a lot of parents would approve of. This is like, hey, if your kid likes YouTubers, this is a safe thing to buy them without worrying about them telling their story about, losing their virginity. In a graphic detail. Not that that's a horrible story, but like there's some pretty awful things people talk about online for views. And it's for views. And that's all it is. And it's such a fake thing that just dissipates into the air once you're done. It's like, why'd you just sell your soul for that?
I know that is certainly a delicate balance of, wanting people to watch your content. Like you don't want to just go for the low-hanging fruit, basically.
You don't.
And it's hard because sometimes the low-hanging fruit, it's there for a reason. It's easy and people will watch it. But it's about trying to transcend the low-hanging fruit and all that kind of stuff. This was so lovely. Thank you for joining me. And don't forget to pick up TBH 51. I'll say 21.
Is it on there? Or are you just reading it again?
No, I'm not.
Okay, good. TBH
51
True Story Collabs.
I always want to say True Collab Stories. True Story Collabs.
That's not I should have called it that. Yeah. Honestly, Amanda, you did an incredible
do a
job.
reprint? Should we do a reprint?
Yeah, let me call Scholastic right now. Have them recall everything.
So yeah, go pick it up anywhere books are available.
Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon for those who have Prime accounts.
Online shopping.
I personally recommend get it from a bookstore. They need your help more than anything in the world. It doesn't even have to be brick and mortar. Just get it from Barnes & Noble online or Books A Million.
Barnes & Noble is a brick and mortar store.
Sure, totally. You don't have to go to the brick. You don't have to walk into the brick. Yeah, anything. Just support your local stores.
And when does Emogenius
June
premiere?
7th. Woo! You think you know emojis? Test yourself on this brand new show and see if you'd win a $10,000. Then if we do another season, come on the show.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.